Now, right off the bat, I'm not one of the individuals who are basically jumping on the death of Concord to celebrate. We're using it as, the way the Twitter trolls are using it to try and point out its failures being due to the diversity and so forth. So if that's what you're looking for, you're not really going to find this on this channel. We're just going to be here to discuss what went down with Concord. And it kind of just compelled me to make a video to bring this back up because, again, I haven't made a video like this in about like 2 months, I think, roughly. I will insert a screenshot by my last upload of videos, but I think it was 2 months since I did the God of War and the Days Gone and the Ghost of Tsushima videos. But I figured, you know what, because I was talking a lot about this on Twitter, I might as well just do a quick video and cover what actually happened with Concord. Now, the simple truth is just that this game was destined to be dead on arrival because it's launching at a price point that all of its competitors basically beat because it's competing with free-to-play games. It's also coming into a saturated market that the competitors already have a stronghold on. So you're competing against games that have had, years worth of battle passes, seasons, and just players putting time into those games. And it's also basically launching, we could say like 5, 6, 7, 8 years too late. And funnily enough, that's how long the game was in development for 8 years. But it's basically launching now when the ship has kind of sailed because all of the hero shooters that established themselves onto the market basically all did it 5+ years ago. And again, Jason Schreier pretty much summed it up perfectly here with regards to the people I was talking about at the beginning of the video. So there's a certain crowd of people, the trolls online that that use the famous term go broke and all that other bullshit, that are trying to use this to say that, it's because of diversity, blah blah blah, all sorts of stupid shit. But I will attach that tweet. I'll try to put it into the screenshot here. But Jason Schreier, who was also covering the story and the news of the game getting shut down this Friday, summed it up perfectly with regards to those people that every time, open quote, every time a live service game with no hook or strong word of mouth fails to penetrate an oversaturated market, the most annoying people on the planet will be there to blame diversity, end quotes. So again, there are several reasons as to why Concord failed, and many of them have been discussed all over the internet. So again, my video is only adding to that pile. Luke Stevens did a fantastic video about this, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, covering, the whole situation of why it struggled to get a big player base. But a lot of people will, again, keep turning and pinning this on diversity. But I'm doing this video again so that I can highlight all of those other points that aren't, the stupid trolls nonsense. But basically, this game was going to die either way. And Sony was just merely prolonging the inevitable. And I think the only way that they could have saved this is if they had gone back to the drawing board and given it a little more time in the oven, or if they completely just switched the model after they saw the failed beta test when they couldn't even get past, I think it was like, they peaked at, I think, like 2,600 players or something like that. But after that test, they should have made it free to play and just taken the hit. But again, they still wanted that initial cash in, and so everything just went tits up. And now it's been confirmed that the game will be going offline on Friday. So again, let's get into this video. Now onto the first of my discussion points. As I mentioned, the price point. This game was charged at $40. For me, this is easily the single biggest factor into why the game can't even break quadruple digits on Steam. Because it's in a market where every single hero shooter is basically free to play. And Concord tried to push its luck with an upfront cost, with the promise of a bunch of free stuff and, microtransactions later, cinematics, and all sorts of other things to justify the price point. But again, if you're competing against free-to-play games, the consumers that you want to actually get in early doors to build up the hype of your game, you normally want them to come in and give your game a try. And if your game ends up being better than the games that are already on the market, then they will start investing that time and slowly growing your player base, right? Because we've seen a lot of games that can launch poorly and then do well 6 months, 8 months, a year down the line. But you're not going to get that with a $40 price point, because people are going to be like, why am I going to pay $40 for this if I can play games XYZ at home? So again, this is coming from me. I'm not even like a multiplayer person. You guys know on my channel I play a whole bunch of single player games. I'm a story merchant, as people would say. But again, even I could see that you simply cannot launch at a price point unless you truly have a unique selling point that can differentiate you from your rivals. Because again, this is where we bring up the Helldivers 2 example, because Helldivers 2 also launched at a similar price point, but Helldivers 2 was successful. Again, both of them are good games. Like, Concord is not a bad game. That's where people get it twisted. Concord is just that it's a very generic game, and so it's not gonna appeal to people. Like, there is that lack of a USP that I was talking about. There's nothing to differentiate it from everything else on the market. So people are always just gonna choose the competitors, and that's where Helldivers 2 makes the big jump, because Helldivers 2 sort of exists in its own little lane. It's also a live service game, but it doesn't actually have a direct competitor. Like, there's a lot of games on the market that are similar to Helldivers 2, but it doesn't have a direct competitor. So it exists in its own lane, and it was able to do everything in its own lane, and so it pulled people in. Whereas Concord is basically a $40 Overwatch regen. That's essentially what it is. So that $40 price point is essentially just going to kill the game on launch. And again, all this was evidenced during the beta testing, but Sony didn't want to listen. They've already sunk millions into the game, and so they were already all in. Now, on to my second point. This goes back to the hero shooter oversaturation and just general oversaturation in a lot of these live service multiplayer markets. All you have to do now is say the phrase hero shooter, and it's an instant turn off for most players, because again, there's hero shooters like Overwatch, Apex Legends, Valorant. These all remain popular, but again, new entries are almost instantly shunned, and that's exactly what happened to Concord here from the moment that the game was basically revealed, because everything pointed it to just being a knockoff of Overwatch, a knockoff of Destiny, and it's gonna constantly be compared. So kind of like we do in football, again, this is a bad thing that a lot of people do in football, where a young player will come up and they'll immediately be called the next XYZ, the next ABC, right? You're always being compared to what came before you. So if you are unable to deliver on those aspects of comparison, right, you're going to lose out to what came before you, because those other games are still on the market. And it's a shame, because again, it reminds me of when the studios were chasing the success of the Battle Royale games, right? This was around about the time that Fortnite popped off, PUBG popped off, I think H1Z1 popped off. A whole bunch of Battle Royale games just basically succeeded and cornered the market and just blew up, right? And then all sorts of studios came out the woodworks trying to make Battle Royale games. Remember, there was like the Battlefield Battle Royale that died. Call of Duty actually made a Battle Royale that died before they made Warzone. People tend to forget about that game. I forget the name. See, even right now, I forget the name of it, but I think it launched in maybe like 2017, 2018, thereabouts, on one of the CODs that was out that time, before they eventually pivoted and made, air quotes, Warzone. So again, during that time, people remember the games that stuck around, that survived, but nobody remembers the hundreds of games that were just dead on arrival, that got buried by studios trying to chase trends, right? And those studios chasing trends, a lot of them went under, because once you go all in on one of these live service games, and if it fails, there's layoffs, there's shutdowns, and that's another bad part of the industry, because I feel like a lot of these execs are playing with people's livelihoods, because as you chase trends, if that trend, like if you're late to the trend, it's like people trying to invest in a stock once it's already gone up, right? Once you've already missed the boat, all you're doing is just burning money at that point. And that's what happens, because now the devs on the ground floor are the ones that get laid off. They're the ones that have to start looking for new jobs and all that stuff. And it's the execs at the top. Their jobs are intact, right? And so they don't sink when the studio sinks, because they're already like fucking millionaires and shit like that. So again, it's disappointing to see in this industry, because the people at the bottom of the pole are the ones that always suffer. And so again, if you just do not have a unique selling point in an oversaturated market, all those years of investment, you're just putting it down the drain, because everyone is not going to abandon the years and like seasons and everything that they've already invested in a game. You have to have a really unique selling point. And I can use Rainbow Six Siege as an example, how Rainbow Six Siege was able to do well, because when they launched back in 2015, I think the beta was in 2015, and then the game officially launched in 2016, they were in their own lane. They were taking players away from COD, but they were in their own lane, and so they were able to build this behemoth that Ubisoft made. Whereas now, for example, we see Ubisoft trying to do games like X-Defiant and all sorts of other stupid games that come and go, right? We've seen them all come and go. There's other titles I'm probably forgetting that they launched and that just died because, again, they're trying to chase a trend rather than do something unique. Now, on to my third point. And again, sorry for rambling and waffling, but it's just going to be 5 points in this video. And my third point is the money they invested, especially the focus on the mocap cinematics. Because again, this seems like they were going for world building. They were trying to build lore, but it just seems a bit of a bizarre investment to sink a lot of money into high quality and mocap cutscenes for a PvP hero shooter, right? This is not some big budget single player story game. Like, you're not making God of War, you're not making Spider-Man. Like, you don't really need a lot of that investment, again, with the promise of a further story. So it kind of feels like we have Guardians of the Galaxy at home kind of thing. Oh, apologies, I just bumped into my mic. So again, I cannot imagine how much of the decision would have increased the cost of the game. And that would have, again, pushed Sony's decision to go through with the launch, because this game cost hundreds of millions. Like, the amount of investment that went into this game is wild. And that was 8 years of development. And I think this game actually cost more than Ghost of Tsushima. So, like, it's not a cheap game for them to, like, release this and for it to just tank. So, I think that also influenced their decision to not turn back. Because once they did the open beta, and they saw the poor results, they saw the bad feedback and everything, they had a decision to make at that point, and they could have either made the game free to play or just turned back, delayed the launch, gone back to the drawing board. But again, I think the amount of money that was invested, and again, I will point to the mocap cinematics, because again, those mocap cinematics are amazing. Like, if that was in any of the story player games, that's top tier. That's why I compare it to Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, the mocap is fantastic, but like, you don't need to put that much money into a fucking 5v5 hero shooter. Like, it's not worth it. You're not going to get the investment back. You do that kind of stuff after the game has succeeded and after you know that you're going to get the money back, not before. And again, onto, and even Fortnite did this shit. Like, the more successful that Fortnite got, the more they started putting money into it and making it bigger and better and all sorts of other stupid shit with all their skins and stuff. So again, they did that after the success, not before the success. Now, on to my fourth point, which ties back into everything I was mentioning about a unique selling point. I think the gameplay simply just doesn't stand out enough. Yes, you know, the weirdest part of it all is just that Concord is not a bad game. And I will say this again, Concord is not a bad game. You could even call it a good game, because mechanically it's good. It's actually a fun shooter. But the problem is, when you're entering a market like this at $40, you have to stand out. And if you're doing that, again, if you're clearly not doing that, you sort of need the gameplay to carry the game. And at this point, the gameplay isn't unique enough. Again, pay attention to my words here. The word unique. So it's not that the gameplay isn't good, but it's not unique. So once again, it ties back to, you're forever going to be compared to whatever else is bigger and successful on the market. So it's not unique enough to differentiate itself from Overwatch and from all the other games that are on the market. So again, we can point to Stellar Blade. This is another game that I played on this channel. Black Myth Wukong. I've been putting some of my playthrough up on TikTok. You guys might have already come across that, and I will be putting the playthrough on the YouTube channel once I get done with it. But again, Stellar Blade, that's a game that's derivative of a lot of titles. Black Myth Wukong, it's a game that's derivative of a lot of titles. But the reason why both of those games succeeded is because they had a unique selling point. They had something to bring you in to be like, okay, this game is similar to XYZ, it's similar to XYZ, but it does its own thing, and its own thing is good enough for me to justify the purchase. Concord just simply was not able to justify the purchase. And again, that goes back to the USP point. Without a unique selling point, you will forever be called a clone of Game XYZ, a discount version of Game XYZ, an at-home version of Game XYZ. And that's where Concord got stuck, because Concord essentially became Overwatch at home, as the memes go online. Now, to my fifth and final point, the game is just simply derivative. And again, I already mentioned this with the unique selling point and gameplay points. It's just derivative of so many things. The concept and characters feel like Guardians of the Galaxy knockoffs. The gameplay feels like a mix of Overwatch, Valorant, Destiny, but especially Destiny in a lot of ways, since again, this game has had a lot of ex-Bungie people working on it. And that has resulted in a comical number of skills taken directly from Destiny, taken directly from Overwatch. And again, Titan barricades and seismic slams and like Warlock floating and just all sorts of elements that are in other games. And again, it's silly. It's not a bad thing because you are able to make a game that's derivative of other games, like I mentioned with Black Myth Wukong and Stellar Blade. But you have to be able to still make it stand out within that derivativeness, if that's an English word, I'm not too sure. But within, it has to be able to stand on its own legs while still being compared to everything else, right? So you are an at-home version of Game XYZ, but you are also the first version of Game XYZ. Like, you're setting the standard, you're setting the pace. But again, as a result, you get a game that basically drowned out, not just by other hero shooters, but at this exact moment, again, no one is paying attention to anything else because Black Myth Wukong has fucking 2.2 million concurrent players right now. And the fact that Valve also announced Deadlock the same night that Concord was released, and Deadlock has like 90,000 plus players, I'm pretty sure. Imagine, and Concord was struggling to break 3,000. So, and this is a game that was unannounced. It was just shadow dropped into the ether, and this shit had like 90,000 people. And also, it needed people to have invite codes. So they sent out a bunch of codes initially, and then, the code started spreading and spreading and spreading. So 90,000 people via just word of mouth. No promotion, no nothing. Just straight up, here's the game, wake up one day, boom, here's the game. Whereas a game that had put millions into marketing, millions into their budget, blah, 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 struggles to get past 3,000 players. So again, I could probably even keep going, but it's clear the concept and execution of Concord did almost everything possible that could go wrong from start to finish, and here we are. So again, once they had made the decision to launch, free-to-play is not going to save it either. This game is done and it's buried, and we've seen that now with the official announcement, and that's why I'm making this video today, because the official announcement confirmed that on Friday, the 6th of September, the game will officially go offline. They've already started issuing refunds to any players who want to. So this is refunds both on PlayStation, both on PC. And again, I'll try to attach some screenshots from my Twitter where I was discussing this a few weeks ago, and it was more in relation to games like Kill the Justice League and just live service generic games in general, where a lot of studios keep chasing this cash cow, but they're basically chasing a shadow that they can't catch up to. So it's the writing was always on the wall. And again, I never want to be the doom and gloom person. You guys know my channel. It's a lot of celebrating games, but whenever something like this happens, we have to cover it fairly. So that's what I figured I would try to do today. So again, it's hard to just imagine Concord being a hit no matter what happened because of the decisions they made at the top. And again, as a mostly single player myself, it's not really a topic that I comment on often, but I figured let me throw my 2 cents into it. And I know other people are celebrating, but don't be mistaken. Even with me celebrating a little bit inside, we are not on the same team as the trolls on Twitter, the assholes who are using diversity and all this other nonsense. Nah, we're not on the same team. We're all celebrating Concord failing, but we're not on the same team. Because again, when I say we, it's because there's a large portion of PlayStation fans who were also concerned with the direction Sony was going with the planned pursuit of the multiplayer live service games. And this is something I've also brought up on the channel where, again, I'm a fan of games of all genres, so it's not to say that there should only be single player games, but I felt like Sony was doing the whole live service game thing because they just saw the cash opportunity in the market rather than them doing it from a passion point of view. And so I think that was going to be evidenced because they plan to launch 12 of these. And so far, Helldivers succeeded. Concord was dead on arrival. I think the next one upcoming is also going to be dead on arrival. I keep forgetting its name. I think Marathon is the name of it's called. There's also another one called Fair Game or some shit like that. That's coming soon, either 2025 or 2026, something like that. I think a lot of them, so out of that 12, I would be surprised if more than 4 of them survive. So far, Helldivers 2 is the one that survived, but I think a lot of the other ones are just going to die. And again, the reason why we bring this up is because Sony is really good at making single-player story games, and they're also good at making multiplayer games, but I think where they kind of lost the plot is that rather than just continue to make multiplayer games, they decided, no, let's pivot to the live service games, right? And that was evidenced by when they tried to turn Factions into a multiplayer game, into a live service game, right? Instead of just giving us Factions 2 attached to The Last of Us Part 2, they decided, no, let's do this whole live service angle, and eventually Factions got cancelled because of Bungie, and so here we are. We do not have Factions. And the reason why I bring up games like Factions is because Sony could have just pivoted and released those games as they used to, right? They used to come as attached to the single-player story games, and all they needed to do was maybe turn some of those into standalone games and just keep the same formula. So Factions 2 could have just been exactly like Factions, but just standalone, and then have its own little universe and world or whatever, and you can release it like that. It doesn't have to be some live service game that you're gonna play for fucking 5, 6, 7 years or whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be that. Like, you can still make money in a pocket that you're good at making games in, right? Without chasing that other bullshit. And again, so that's where Sony fans kind of hated Concord, because Concord represented a transition on the part of Jim Ryan to live service games. So old school PlayStation fans, to us, it represents everything we hate about modern AAA games. Because again, Concord is a game that was only greenlit because developers were hoping, or let me say executives, right? Normally it's not the developers, but the executives are probably hoping it would pop off and they would get a live service cash cow. But it basically had no chance of doing that. So again, Concord represents a huge colossal waste of time, a huge colossal waste of money, a huge colossal waste of resources from a company that has seen their output of the products just decline drastically, right? Because they could choose to keep outputting, the big single player story launches, but they had to slow down in order to put development on these other games. And that's, again, we go back to Factions. Factions slowed Naughty Dog down because Naughty Dog basically wasted like 3 years or some shit working on a game that just got scrapped and canceled. So now it delayed whatever other game that Naughty Dog was going to work on because, that game got pushed down the line. So again, a lot of PlayStation fans, we want single player games from Sony, but we also want a revival of the multiplayer games. And there's games like Killzone that are buried. SOCOM, a lot of people will remember SOCOM. And again, even the idea I mentioned with The Last of Us, Factions, basically revive small multiplayer games that used to be attached, make them standalone. Uncharted multiplayer is another one. It could have been so simple, because the one thing that the live service market will always give them trouble with is because there's so many free-to-play alternatives, right? So many alternatives exist for some of those games. So if you try to pivot into that market and you're going to sink millions and millions of dollars into it and you don't have a unique selling point, you're just going to get bodied by all the existing franchises that are already there, right? So if all those games are going to bury you, why not stay in your lane and release where you thrive in your pocket, where, again, there are no other games that did it as good as Uncharted multiplayer. There are no other games that did it as good as Factions. Killzone was a beast on of its own. SOCOM was a beast in of its own. So, like, there's so many ideas and IP there, but Sony just decided to pivot to their own little thing. So again, it's just disappointing to see, and I hope they take this as a learning lesson. I hope this influences how they approach their next upcoming live service games. And I also hope that this shows them that if you make a game that people want and that people are craving for, it'll succeed, as seen by Stellar Blade, as seen by Black Myth Wukong. But if you make a game just because you're chasing trends, just because you're trying to, you know, ride a wave, and there's no soul, there's no passion in that game, the customers are going to let you know what they think of that game, and ultimately it's going to fail. So I hope Sony took notes. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Sony should have gone through with the launch? Do you think maybe they should have made the game free to play? Do you think that would have saved it? Do you think there's anything I'm missing from all the reasons I outlined in the video, as well as are there any classic Sony multiplayer games that you would like to see come back at any point in time, either on PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 6, who knows? As always, hope you guys enjoy the video. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay dangerous, stay blessed, and peace out. Right there.
Shit.
Imagine having to put down your own brother.
Oh my god.
Oh. Died last time. Come on, let's go. Woo. Let's go. It's those father-son moments again. Oh, but now Freya's here as well.
That if you just build great games, everything would turn around.
And then the great games point is the one that I wanted to argue against heavily, because what is the point of your console if it's not for games? Like, what is the point of having a console if you're just gonna do Game Pass and cloud gaming? Like